Whilst the lap of honour at Old Trafford had been for the Rowleys and Pearsons and Careys and Coburns, the new generation had been lapping United's training ground, just waiting for the call. It was graduation day for football's first school of excellence. Busby had already added Birmingham winger Johnny Berry to the equation. With Delaney and Mitten gone, the flank positions were the first to be overhauled. Over on the left, Roger Byrne had won the race to be the first of the homegrown crop to claim a regular place, operating rather reluctantly as a winger for much of the title campaign. United were about to harvest the labours of their scouts. The likes of Bob Bishop and Billy Behan were unearthing the talent out in the field. And at home, Jimmy Murphy was overseeing the fatherly work of Bert Whalley and Joe Armstrong.
When I come here, I laid tremendous emphasis on the fact that we're going to try and build our own players. And we went out into the highways and byways, if you like, trying to get young boys.
They came, we nurtured them, we watched them, we looked after them, they were coached. We were sort of all together type of thing. You become a sort of family. It was a family.
We won the Youth Cup every year I played. The first 5 years of its existence was won by Manchester United. But the youth team, Jimmy Murphy always used to say, was the cream of Manchester United, you know. This was the most important thing. Forget about the first team in the FA Cups and all that. This is the most important thing. And I can remember I wouldn't go to bed the night before a youth match because I'd been brainwashed, indoctrinated into thinking that this was the most important match that you ever played in your whole life.
He was just so good, so reliable and so good at his job. He helped so many players to come through.
He was right-footed, Wilf, and my dad left him kicking the ball under the stand. Do this, Wilf, right foot, left foot, just kick it against the wall, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And my dad forgot all about him. 2 or 3 hours he was there, and my dad heard him under the stand kicking the ball, and he went to him, dripping with sweat, and he ended up being a left-footer, Wilf. He used to call them his little apples, golden apples, and he used to say to Matt, he's ready now, he's ripe. Put him in the side, he'll be ready now. He'll do you a job.
So Matt, when he sometimes had a couple of bad results, he didn't do things by halves, and sometimes, you know, he would completely decimate the team. He would say 4 or 5, and he'd say, you know, I'm changing it, and I'll bring in the kids, and that's how the Busby Babes probably got its reputation.
The Busby Babes. Roger Byrne the first to show, Duncan Edwards probably the greatest of all, an international at 17. David Pegg, an elegant outside left in the Tom Finney tradition from Doncaster. Another Yorkshireman, halfback Mark Jones. Manchester City fan Dennis Viollet, born to score goals. Inside forward Billy Whelan, a Dubliner. And from Northern Ireland, Jackie Blanchflower, Danny's younger brother. And the gifted Eddie Coleman from Salford.
Eddie Coleman was my idol. I went for the smaller fella, and Eddie was snake hips because I was nothing like him. I used to try and copy him, but I couldn't, obviously. I wasn't Eddie Coleman. But I used to clean his boots, extra special. Better than everybody else, including Duncan's, you know.
I think it was number 9 Archie Street he lived at. It was Archie Street anyway. And they had an off-licence on the corner, and we used to go for jugs of beer and lemonade and mix a shandy together. And we used to have Big Duncan over there, Davy Pegg, Tommy Ted. They'd all come into each other's houses. You know, we just palled out together. It was marvellous.
Duncan Edwards from Dudley in the Black Country was the head boy. From the very beginning, every team he played in revolved around him.
One day I was talking with Joe Mercer, and Joe had, at that time, he was captain of Arsenal, and at that time he had taken the English schoolboys on for a week, doing a bit of coaching with them in round about Blackpool.
And the lad that stood out, head and shoulders above everybody else, is this Duncan Edwards from Briley Hill. And Matt came, and he's looking for Alec Farrell, a local lad who played for Everton, went to Everton. And I said, yeah, I can play. And we got talking. I said, well, the best player of that lot is Duncan Edwards.
And he says, what's more, he says, he's Manchester United man. So that started us after Duncan Edwards, and eventually we signed. Talking about Duncan, I always mind the things he used to do before a match. And you'd done your little last 30 minutes talking before they went out. And Big Duncan used to say, he meant, we haven't come here for nothing. He would say, come on boys, We ain't come here for nothing, N-U-F-F-I-N. This was always his famous saying before going out.
Either foot, right foot, left foot. He could manipulate the ball any way that he wanted to. If you wanted him to smash a 70-yard crossfield pass, he would pinpoint a 70-yard crossfield pass. He used to run around like a gazelle. He loved scoring goals. He was just a complete player. He was a fantastic defender. He was brave, he was good in the air.
Edwards was like a tank when England in trouble in defence.
Sort of a Brian Robson, only twice as powerful, you know. And I'll give you one story. We were playing Chelsea in the semi-final of a Youth Cup game. And before the game, Jimmy Murphy had said, look, you're great young players. You're playing for Manchester United. A lot of you are going to go on for England. And we've got a player, Duncan Edwards, who's in the team. Now, I don't want you to have an Edwards complex. He said before the game, whenever you get the ball, I don't want you to think, oh, we've got to give it to Duncan. Look for each other, you're quality players. Play it, everybody get a feel of the ball. And at half-time, it was 0-0. And things weren't going well, and he was giving us Gina's up Murphy. And just before he went out, he said, and by the way, whenever you get the ball this half, look for Duncan, he said. And we did, and we won, and it was Duncan that scored.
Still they came, future England internationals, Bill Fowkes, Ray Wood, the teenage goalkeeper from Darlington, and the goal poacher, signed for £30,000 from Barnsley, Tommy Taylor, christened the smiling executioner for that perpetual grin. Taylor had plenty to laugh about. He scored well over 100 goals for United at the rate of 2 every 3 games. A powder keg of a striker with unrivalled ability in the air and endless stamina.
Good run by Berry. Berry still with it. Matthews back there tackling him. And there it is! A magnificent goal by Taylor.
Oh, Whelan. Pegg. I mentioned that. Really keeping the ball on the floor. Now young McGuinness to Berry cutting it very nicely. This could be the first goal. It's a goal, a lovely one. It's Manchester coming back on the attack. It's almost a relentless tide now. A battle between these Manchester forwards and wing halves. And here's one of the wing halves, Coleman, and this Spurs defence. It's Pegg. Pegg out to number 10, Edwards. This equalising goal must come. And there it is! Yes, it's a great goal! It's scored by Coleman!
Pegg with it out on the left wing. All the United forwards up. Mileage. Cross to Berry, it comes. On the right wing. Blackpool defence trying the offside game. Berry going through with it by himself. Cross it comes and Palms made it perfectly. It's a fake hit. It's a goal. It's a goal. This is the goal that should give them the championship.
The Babes' first championship was won by a margin of 11 points. From New Year's Day until the end of the season, they were beaten just once. They were unbeaten at Old Trafford. Success had arrived sooner than most had expected, but this was a team in a hurry. Today, England. Tomorrow, the world.
When we won the championship 56, I had said to my board at the time, I said, no, I'd like us to go into Europe. And of course, they were very happy about it. I said, well, what do you think? I said, well, the next thing is we apply. And of course, at that time, after the Chelsea, the year previous, the League Management Committee sent a letter to the club saying they didn't like the idea of us going in. We had a meeting again, and I felt very strongly about it at the time, and I thought, well, this is a new world, a new avenue to go into, and we just went on with it.
The first time we played in the European Cup at Main Road against Anderlecht, we won 10-0. And the centre-forward, Mermans, who played for Belgium, he said, I couldn't understand it. He says, they're winning 6-0, and they're running about as though they haven't scored. And this is how they wanted to play. Just keep going the whole 90 minutes.
Floodlights at Main Road, Manchester. Having lost 3-5 in Bilbao, United must beat their opponents by 3 clear goals to reach the semi-finals of the European Cup. They begin with an opening offensive that already seems to point the way to victory. But Atletico de Bilbao are renowned as a crack Spanish 11, and Manchester knows it only too well. 4 minutes before half-time, Manchester's Violet goes through, and it's a goal! Manchester's second came from a free kick. Taylor doing the rest. He and Berry made the third, and Manchester was set for the semi-finals.
United retained their league championship with 3 games to spare, but an unimaginable treble chance was on. The stunning comeback against Bilbao had put them in the last 4 of the European Cup, whilst Birmingham were waiting in the semi-finals of the FA Cup.
John Barry receives and makes for the penalty area. He beats Ken Green. Everyone expects him to pass, but he fools them all and shoots. Manchester fans are wild with joy, but there's more to come. Outside left, David Pegg is on the move straight from the restart. Jeff Hall blocks him, but he retrieves it and tries again. Over to Bobby Charlton, who slams it home.
United's European semi-final was a rather different matter, though. Their opponents were Real Madrid, Di Stefano, Copa, Gento and all. Both David Pegg and Eddie Coleman confessed to feeling sick with nerves at the prospect of facing the holders in front of 125,000 inside the Bernabeu. After holding out for an hour, United conceded 3 goals. But a scrambled reply from Tommy Taylor offered them hope. They'd learnt a lot, not least about some of Madrid's ugly cynicism in the tackle. Taylor's goal wasn't the prettiest, but it set up the return. Old Trafford's first floodlit European game.
European Cup semi-final, second leg. Madrid won the first encounter by 3 goals to 1, so United must get 3 clear goals in this match to reach the final. After 25 minutes, Copa takes a pass in the penalty area and shoots a low one. So began 9 minutes of dramatic, decisive soccer. Here's Madrid's second. Gento passes, Real shoots. Too easy. On come the floodlights for the second half. Manchester, 4 goals down in the aggregate, need a miracle to save them. Is this it? Pegg centres. Taylor does the rest. Another Pegg pass, and Charlton scores a beauty. They've equalised, but it's farewell to European Cup hopes.
The FA Cup was to prove a heartbreaker too. United were firm favourites to complete a domestic double at Aston Villa's expense. But with only 6 minutes played, they lost their goalkeeper Ray Wood to a mindless challenge from Peter McParland. Wood's cheekbone was shattered, and although he somehow reappeared later, centre-half Jackie Blanchflower had to put on the gloves and jersey. No substitutes in those days. Ironically, it was McParland who twice beat him before Tommy Taylor pulled a goal back for United. Too little, too late. The treble chasers had bagged just 1.
Woodfolks Byrne, Coral Jones Edwards, Berry Whelan Taylor Violet Pegg.
The bouncing babes were now household names and seemed destined to be for many years to come. They were as popular as they were gifted. Youthful, athletic, clean-cut. The boy wonders. Everyone wanted to be seen with them. Everyone wanted to see them play. All the lads and lasses, smiles upon their faces, walking down the Warwick Road to see him at Busby's Aces. In their last league game at Old Trafford, they beat Bolton 7-2. 2 days before their fateful departure for Belgrade, they won a classic at Arsenal by 5 goals to 4. The club had decided to charter a plane for the European quarter-final after serious delays returning home from a preliminary round tie in Brussels in September. It was the journey from which 8 of them would never return.
Belgrade, Wednesday, February the 5th. Manchester United have flown to the Yugoslav capital to play their return match with Red Star Belgrade, the champions of Yugoslavia. United only have to draw to make sure of a place in the European Cup semi-final, the round in which they were beaten last year. The Belgrade Stadium is packed to capacity, everyone eager to see the young men whose fame has rung round Europe.
The game was a 3-3 draw. The Busby Babes' farewell performance was a fitting one. Dennis Violet scored after 90 seconds as United raced into a 3-0 lead. The budding Bobby Charlton added 2 more in as many minutes, the first after an exhilarating run. The semi-finals were beckoning again.
There was a feeling that we were as good as anybody around in the world.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I believe they would have been Britain's greatest ever footballing side.
Here was a team who'd come to the prime at 20 years of age, and people just didn't realise that it could happen so quick.
With the team we had and the age we had, they just gathered experience. I could probably sat in my office for about 10 years because it was all there.
Great players who were on the verge of being world stars. You know, this is, and we've got to try and imagine before television, the word would go around, and the word was obviously going around as it was. You know, Manchester United, watch Manchester United, look at their results, and then suddenly the whole thing has gone, and all the future suddenly, you know, is not as certain as we all thought it was going to be.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war. And 7 of them died in the crash. 10 others, as well as their famous manager, Matt Busby, were injured. Some so seriously that their lives hung in the balance. Busby's babes, as they were affectionately called, were on their way home from Belgrade when the disaster struck. They were on top of the world. Their 3-goal draw with Yugoslavia's Red Star team had put them through to the European Cup semi-finals. They had high hopes of the English FA Cup. Now those hopes are snuffed out, like the lives of 7 of their finest players. Duncan Edwards injured, Bill Fuchs injured. Mark Jones killed. Ray Wood injured. Eddie Coleman killed. David Pegg killed. Dennis Viollet injured. Tommy Taylor killed. Roger Byrne killed. Bill Whelan killed. John Barry injured. At the time of going to press, Matt Busby was fighting for his life. The team secretary, Walter Crickmer, was killed. Manchester, from the moment the news came through, was a city in mourning. Newspapers sold as fast as they could be printed. It was as though every family in a city of 750,000 people had suffered a personal loss, and so indeed they had. At Old Trafford, the saddest football ground in the world, the flags flew at half-mast. And on hundreds of other football grounds, other flags were being dipped in sympathy. For this disaster is perhaps the most tragic single blow British sport has ever suffered.
The shock, the grief, the hopeful vigils continued long after the crash that had instantly claimed the lives of 21 passengers. Coach Bert Wally, trainer Tom Curry and left-back Jeff Bent were also lost to the club. Johnny Berry and Jackie Blanchflower survived but never played again. Amongst those receiving intensive hospital care were both Matt Busby and Duncan Edwards. Manchester waited and hoped that their famous names would be added to the list of survivors.
Well, I was lucky I got out because my safety belt was broke and I cut out my hands and knees. Just as I got to the outside of the plane, I seen a few of the boys hanging about, Peter here, and I called him to come back. I heard a kiddie crying and brought me to senses. I lifted the kiddie out and handed it to Peter. He took it away. Well, I went round to the back of the plane and the first person I saw was Billy Folks.
I did remember to put my head below the seat. Otherwise, I think I'd had part of it knocked off. But I got my head well below the seat and strapped myself really tight into my belt. And because I knew there was something it was going to crash. I could feel it, you know. And I was lucky that the plane wasn't sliced in half on my side. It was sliced in half on the other side, on a diagonal, just across, virtually right underneath my feet, you know. So I would say yes, I was very lucky.
Well, I was with the Welsh team. The Welsh team played Israel and Cardiff in the World Cup. A taxi from town and got to the office at the top end there, and Alma George, who was our secretary then. I went upstairs, and there seemed to be no one about. It was most strange, there's no one around at all. And I had a drink, gave her a drink, and she said, "Haven't you heard, Jimmy?" He says, "Heard about what?" She said, the plane has crashed. It never struck me at all. She started to cry, and then it struck me very vividly. I thought, God, no. The last thing I thought was a plane crash. So in my John little office there, I went in, I cried myself for 20 minutes, couldn't realise it. It's hard to lose players you brought up, more or less live with. Very difficult.
More than a fortnight later, Duncan Edwards lost his fight for life and was buried in his native Dudley. He was 21.
Even after 40 years, we still have quite a number of visitors come here to see the window, also to visit the cemetery where his grave is, and the Dudley Leisure Centre where the memorabilia are housed. And we have visitors coming from all over the world, from Australia, Canada, America, all who know and remember Duncan Edwards and want to pay him their respects. It's almost like a pilgrimage, one could say.
What impressed me, was that the people who were in the crash, people like Bill Foulkes, sort of started playing better than he'd ever played. Harry Gregg was a colossus there in goal, and Bobby Charlton matured and took on the mantle of, and was everywhere on the field. You know, the way they played was sensational, and they seemed to get strength, you know, as though they were playing for the rest of the boys. It was a tremendous run to the cup final.